Hold still! You lied to me, you lied to me! In the face, in my face. Put it in the peanut butter. In the face, in my face, in the face, in my face. In the face, in my face.
I thought you said this guy was a Christian. What is this?
Liberate tutte me.
You know, going back to, I guess, DC Universe, talking about the New 52, my main complaints is that I think that they are just trying to appeal to their audience rather than tell the best stories they can. And I think the specific audience they're trying to appeal to is a younger audience. And I just wonder if they're guessing correctly what that audience wants. You know, among the changes they made with the New 52 were to basically wipe out the Justice Society of America and replace them with younger versions of themselves. One of which was gay. So I mean, they're kind of like I feel like they're trying to check off a bunch of demographic boxes. You know, I mean, I remember before the New 52 launched, how much they were talking about at these panels, which they used to put up as a podcast online, the San Diego Comic-Con panels. People, like, it seemed like every fifth person that had a question, it was something about diversity and wanting more diversity. And I'm just wondering if that's what all, you know, that represents a true percentage of readers that really care about, like, I want a wheelchair-bound character, I want a lesbian character, I want a Latino character, I want, you know, whatever, and I'm all for diversity, but it just feels like that they maybe got too focused on trying to check these demographic boxes and please different people and stuff that it just doesn't make for the best stories they could possibly be telling. And, you know, so the older generation of characters in DC is now gone. And they also kind of reset the continuity so that all of the heroes, like even the big ones like Superman and Batman, have now only been around for about 5 years. They're only 5 years into their superhero careers. So like Flash, Green Lantern, Superman, all these guys are relatively new at the hero thing. And so they lose all of their experience and the confidence that comes from that experience and the lessons they've learned, the wisdom they've picked up. And so a lot of them were reading like very much the same characters to me. Like, they were just insecure and trying to figure out how to live life as a superhero or whatever. And I'm like, you're telling the same story with every single one of these characters. And the ones where they weren't doing that, like say Superman and Batman, which had some, you know, unique things going on, were all in the wrong directions. Batman, as I said before, was all like about, you know, this surrogate family and getting, you know, becoming emotionally stable and psychologically stable, you know, and and Superman has been, since day one of this reboot, brooding, and I have yet to see a panel of Superman smiling. He's always angry. He's angry at somebody. And it's like, you know, Superman should not be a person that I would not want my child to be around. Like, I would feel afraid for my child's safety around this Superman if he existed in the real world. You know, and Superman is the last character you should be able to say that of. But he's about the first one I would say that of in the New 52. So, there's some major blunders with that character. And now there is no, like, there's no paragon of virtue and justice, and there's no hero character that resembles what Superman was in the DC Universe now. That I'm aware of, because I stopped reading the New 52 about a year. I was finally done with every single New 52 comic. A year into New 52, I think I was finally done. I was like, no, they are not going to right this boat. And so it's just kind of been a mess, and I don't even think they know what they're doing. because when I watched, and I mentioned this on the Spirit Blade Underground podcast, but when I watched and took in coverage of Comic-Con and the announcements that DC had, at least half of what they had to talk about was promoting other media that their characters are featured in, like video games and movies primarily. The rest was all these like one-shot stories that are coming up that are about alternate reality versions of the DC universe. Or they are gimmick stories that are changing the status quo in an obviously temporary way. So I'm like, they don't have a plan right now, it doesn't look like, for how they can really make their core universe. Not all these alternate reality versions of their core universe or these temporary gimmick changes to the status quo. They don't have a plan that I'm seeing to really make their core main universe one that I am going to be interested at all in reading. They're just resorting to gimmicks and distractions. One of the biggest of which, I think, is Superman having his identity revealed to the world. The fact that it was by Lois Lane, I know that bothers some people or they find it ironic or whatever. I don't really care at the end of the day. But you take that away, and you've lost what Superman was intended to be from day one. When Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster created the character, they wanted to create a character that represented them and people like them who they were Jewish immigrants and they felt like they were overlooked and they had no place in society. And so they created this character, and the whole concept was, people don't think we're anything special, girls don't think anything of us, but what if secretly we were amazing? What if underneath we were so much more than they assumed by looking at us on the surface? That was the whole concept of Superman. And it's gone now. There's no potential for that because the Clark Kent identity is useless. So it just seems like a shock tactic, like the stories they used to tell in the 90s, like when they first killed Superman. Oh my gosh, Superman is dead. And then they noticed how many comics they sold and like, oh my gosh, Batman's back is broken. And Green Lantern's gone totally bonkers and he's killing everybody. That's what they did, these shock value gimmicky stories in the 90s. And I feel like this is a return to that. Like they cannot possibly maintain, they might even think they will, but they cannot possibly maintain forever this whole the glasses are off for good. That's what they said in their promos. The glasses are off for good now, but I cannot see how they can maintain that. People, I think, will eventually want Clark Kent back, or they will eventually realize what they threw away when they got rid of the secret identity. You might say to yourself, well, how? That's a stupid thing. How could it work? How could Lois Lane not know? I think that that concept works by finding the halfway point between suspension of disbelief, which audiences have to do to some degree when you're dealing with comic book stories, and then also changing how Clark Kent is portrayed. The Christopher Reeve nerdy Clark Kent, or certainly the Clark Kent that's been in the comics for a long time, which is basically he's just kind of quiet and he has glasses. That's the only difference between him and Superman in the comics since like the 90s. Maybe even like since the late 80s. And really, the Christopher Reeve's uber nerdy, that's the right direction to go in. And it's more reflective of who he originally was in his creation by Siegel and Schuster. But what I would like to see, and I'm going to stop playing, I'm sorry, I'm just going to talk about this and get it out of my system, then I'll get back to the game. What I would like to see is for them to update what kind of nerd he is. Okay, the 1950s pocket protector nerd that like Christopher Reeve was going for, oh, what a wonderful performance, and I still love watching it. But that's not the kind of nerd that we really think of when we think of nerd today. We think of a guy that's really socially awkward. He has greasy, nasty hair, and he's got some kind of maybe a speech impediment of some kind. He's really awkward to talk to. Maybe he talks too much, and about totally weird things, and he stays up all night playing World of Warcraft, and he does nothing but play D&D on the weekends. and he's got bad breath and horrible hygiene. You just don't want to, like, this super uber awkward uber nerd. That is the uber nerd of today, you know? Someone who is just, like, socially, like, you know, all those things. And the way you make Clark Kent work, and I wish they would have done this in the movies, but we've seen in the trailer that they're not going for this Clark Kent. They're going for the freaking, you know, 80s and 90s, like, could be a model out of GQ version of Clark Kent. But this Clark Kent, no. He wears loose-fitting clothing, so you can't see his physique, or it certainly at least de-emphasizes it, and he certainly slouches, and he doesn't make eye contact with people, and he's very awkward and difficult to talk to the point where people would not want to talk to him, okay? And so you could justify people like, okay, hey, Clark, see him from across the room, I'm going the other way. His breath stinks, his hair's all greasy, you can't see half of his face, maybe, I don't know. Well, I don't know, you can't have long hair just as Clark, I guess. I don't know how they would do that. I guess maybe you could have that halfway long hair. It could come down to his eyes a little bit and then be slicked back or something. I don't know, I'll let them work that out. But he's a guy, and he Coke bottle lenses, so his eyes are totally distorted. It's not just that he has glasses, but his eyes look totally distorted because they're these huge, super thick lenses. And then you make him a reporter that works from home. He's not in the office, you know. And he only has a really bad picture if it's ever associated with his work on the website or the print newspaper or whatever. But there are things that you could do to make the uber nerd Clark Kent not only work, but work better than it ever has before. And not only that, but that kind of nerd, he would be the uber nerd outcast that no one gives a second thought to, who is in fact the person that everyone looks up to. You know, that would be a fantasy that would capture the hearts of nerds. You know, you talk about why is Superman such a hard character to write? It's because they've been getting Clark Kent wrong for years. For years. Superman becomes the most exciting character to write if you get Clark Kent right, and they've been screwing up Clark Kent for years. All right, in the middle of editing this, I realized I wanted to expand on one of my thoughts. I said that he would be a really fascinating character if you wrote him this way, and I think that's because of the sacrifice that he would have to make as Clark Kent. You know, why would he go to all this trouble? Because he doesn't want to wear a mask as Superman. He wants to be someone that people are not afraid of, that people can relate to, you know, that people can feel safe around. And so what's the sacrifice to that? He has to have this completely false identity and look like not just a buffoon, but just like be repulsive maybe to be around, or really uncomfortable to be around. He has to just basically sacrifice his entire life, in a sense, in order to do this. And I think that's where a lot of the great storytelling could be done, because he doesn't have to be like this paragon of virtue that's like, I must do this for the good of the people. No, he can be someone who is dedicated to doing what's right, but who is having a really hard time doing it, you know, who struggles maybe with loneliness, you know, who is, you know, is sad when he is overlooked and underappreciated. And that is like a huge element of who this character could be to so many people, because how many fans of comic books, myself included, so often feel overlooked, underappreciated, misunderstood, cast out, you know. And Superman could once again be the model superhero that represents what all superheroes, you know, are kind of about, and which is about this fantasy of what if I was more than people think I am, you know, or that I think I am, you know. It could be such a fascinating story, and, you know, as we're going through that journey with him, as it's hard for him to make the right choices, and it's a story of sacrifice, you know, and in a sense, I mean, this wouldn't have to be the goal, and people wouldn't have to see this, but I mean, as a nice side effect from a Christian standpoint, it would be a great model of what Christ did, you know, about he set aside, you know, the honor that was due him, him the respect that was due him. He let go of his rights as the God of the universe and lived humbly and sacrificed his life for us, both in the end and day to day. He just lived his life for other people and set aside his own desires, you know. And so this would be just a fantastic and really interesting character. And even setting that aside, because that's you know, that's not going to resonate with a lot of people, but I think just like non-Christians would just find this to be such a fascinating character that they could really feel for and empathize with, but at the same time look up to, you know, want to be like, you know. Man, he would just be such a fascinating character that everyone, I think, could really relate to. And you might say to yourself, like, well, if he's holed away and stuff, I mean, how could he be doing the whole reporter thing? I would say in this scenario, he lets Lois Lane be the star reporter. Like, he is a reporter just enough to have access to the alerts about, you know, dangers going on, tragedies taking place that he needs to address. He would be just connected enough so that he could have the inside track on stuff that's going on that as Superman he needs to go take care of. But aside from that, he's writing just like crap articles on stupid, boring stuff in the background. He's not in the office and stuff like that, you know. I think that's, again, that's part of the sacrifice that he makes. You know, he lets someone else have the glory, someone else have the attention, someone else have the honor, even though he is so capable. So you add all this together, all these things that just keep stacking one on top of the other, all the stuff that he is sacrificing that makes him a character that's so easy to sympathize with. I think you need three personas. You need Superman, you need Clark Kent as he is in public, and then you need what I would call Kal-El. And that's Clark as he is on the farm, as he is with Martha and Jonathan Kent, who should both be alive, because you can also tell stories that you're not seeing told in any other comics when you have this unique relationship of Clark Kent having a healthy relationship as an adult with his parents who are still alive. Man, there are so many unique stories that can be told with that kind of dynamic. The problem is, I suspect, that because of this, statistically 50% of marriages in America end in divorce, you just don't have probably writers on staff that are familiar with that kind of that kind of dynamic, that kind of relationship dynamic. Statistically, those writers probably come from either broken homes or they don't have good relationships with their parents as adults, you know, or there's some kind of, you know, something. You just don't find that. It's so rare. And so when you have creative teams changing and stuff, I don't know how you can't maintain that. How can you expect to maintain that kind of interesting dynamic when maybe Jeff Johns or such and such a writer knows how to write that kind of dynamic, but nobody else does on staff, you know? So I think I understand why that's not working. It's such a bummer. Anyway. ChristianGeekCentral.com